telling you the precise location so that nobody runs out and starts a genetic test for it until they publish the validation work. Because I definitely don't want anybody to start testing for it until we release it for you and tell you that it's real and that it works. But it's in the same neighborhood as this gene, actually directly beside a known mutation that causes it in people. So we feel really good about this. And I think the reason we're so excited about it is because we think it's an opportunity to cut this disease process off at the pass for golden retrievers. Now, I didn't tell you the kind of full story about this family and how all this came to be and how we got to know them, but I am going to tell you a really interesting part of this story, which is that I don't think this family is the end of this story, right? Golden retrievers are not exactly the most diverse in their genetics. And what I found, what Victor found actually, was my 12 and 3/4-year-old golden retriever here is a carrier for this variant. Now, she doesn't have HCM because this is a recessive disease, so she's safe, and I took her ovaries out long ago. So she's not going to be producing dogs with this variant, but it's out there, right? This is Lyra, she looks great, but she's harboring a mutation that if she were crossed with another dog harboring this mutation, could produce early onset sudden death in golden retrievers. And so Lyra's from a popular line, right? I was a young, happy guy working in golden retrievers for a long time as a kennel boy for maybe people in the room right now. And Lyra's, from one of my favorite places and one of my favorite people, Leslie White. And she bred great dogs, and they were real puppy. And so I'm going to guess that there's a fair bit of heterozygous T. troponin I mutants in the population, which is why we are looking at that right now and trying to screen for it and see if they're out there. And if they are, we want to let you know about that because you can breed away from this, right? You don't have to not breed dogs that are heterozygous. You just have to not breed them together. And it's a really good way to be able to preserve genetic diversity, but get away from something that could leave you with a litter of multiple puppies to die. Very, very important. So that's the story I wanted to tell you about a novel discovery. We're really excited about it. Yeah. Yeah, were we able to check the Saturn gene? Yes, they were heterozygous. Yeah, both of them were heterozygous for the mutation. So we know that they are both heterozygous. So it makes perfect sense. I would love to tell you that it's a de novo variant, that the first time this variant ever happened was in this family, but that's not true. They were both heterozygous. Yeah?
Are you using any of the girls' blood to, now that you've discovered this, to track and to see what the developments?
I'm not yet. That's a really great question. So we have 100 golden retrievers in our cohort or so. We've taken another 50 with paired echo results today. And so we're going to look at the prevalence in that population first. And then reaching out for a broader population that's not phenotyped would be on our radar. Whether that's through requesting girls' DNA samples or whether that's just by asking our friends at Ampart to look. I think all of those options are really reasonable because this would be very easy for someone to go into a genetic data set and just identify whether it's there. Not necessarily something, if we have low-pass sequencing on a lot of golden retrievers in the girls study already, they could just look for this.
So, like, if we gave blood today, would you be able to find out?
Yeah, so all 50 participants that we did in that golden today are going to get their results back for that test as soon as you run it. We'll let you know. We're not yet offering the test commercially because we want to make sure we pair it with the echo. I believe this is recessive, right? But I can't rule out that dogs that are heterozygous don't have slightly thicker heart muscle than dogs that don't have any copies. So I want to do that work first. We really want to answer that question. But Victor has the publication nearly written already. We just need to put that little piece of data in it and try to get it out there. Yeah.
So you're taking blood tests from, blood samples from those who've had echoes, because you
Yes.
know that they're
Because I know that they're normal. That's right.
normal. How can we help? Is there anything we can do?
Yeah, I don't think we're not. Today was the ask for us. The ask was to get these 50 dogs that we know are perfectly phenotyped for the condition, and be able to look and make sure. Every now and again you find a genetic mutation, and then you look under another rock, and you're like, huh, that's weird. It looks perfect, but it's not. And so we don't want to do that, right? So we want to get these results back first before we make it out, get it out there. As soon as we release the location and things, it's going to end up on a panel, and people are going to use it inappropriately without guidance. And so we're trying to be really careful about that. But what we will say is, if we get our results back and it looks like the heterozygous rate is high, we'll make some communications and things about it, and then we'll start the process of offering screening and reaching out to others to ask for them to screen their populations too.
So we also have the senior golden retriever study,
Yes.
so that you can utilize that
That's
part
right.
as well.
Yep.
With the importance of their features.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we're part of those. So I was on the ERBD4 discovery for the longevity work that Rob reviewed did. So we have access to all the genome sequencing data for those dogs as well. So the golden community and the community folks who do research in goldens is really good about sharing cross collaboration. So as soon as we think we need something, we ask for it, and people are really good about that. So I don't want anybody to think that we're hindered by not having access to samples. We've been really lucky in that way, particularly with goldens. Actually, way more lucky with goldens than any other.
Oh, yeah.
So based on the preliminary 2 breedings,
Yes.
that validated 4 out of 16, plus or
Yeah,
minus, or
that's right.
so that's saying you're double recessive.
Yeah. The only affected dogs had 2 copies of the mutation. Yes.
So is this something that you would absolutely see in a necropsy? Will they know to look for this in a necropsy?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Is it something you would absolutely see on necropsy? You should. What I will say is there are very few cardiac pathologists out there in the world, like a very small handful, and so I do believe this could be, like I was kind of flippant in the beginning, right, and said this is probably just SAS. It would be very easy for somebody to look at one of these dogs and just be like, is there a ridge there? Maybe. And so some of these dogs could be SAS. That's actually a question that I have, which we'll, I think, answer soon based on the frequency of the carriers, is how many dogs with sudden death did we think were SAS that were actually HCS?
It's interesting.
That's a really interesting question.
I asked it because we have a dog that happened to. The
Yeah.
dog was healthy and fine and just dropped on a retreat
Yeah.
Such a
with no necropsy results stating what it was.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, I think, I don't know about you all, but I find necropsies really hard. I think it's really hard to get people to do necropsies. It's really hard to get people to do necropsies and be really invested in the outcome of those tests. Some of the commercial labs that offer necropsies, I don't think are as interested in answering all the questions that we've not answered, and so I am a little, this is my bias, I'm sure, because I'm in academia, but I'm a little nervous about necropsies that don't go to an academic institution where somebody's just doing the necropsy for the love of doing a necropsy.
So how do we get them to do it more?
One
That's a great question.
one of the things that we're seeing with the Morris, the extension of the Morris study that I've asked for, is that we're getting a ton of information on these necropsies. And I think at some point, the foundation can be very instrumental in getting the names of these institutions out. Even with that, some people are very reluctant to get it because they almost don't want to know. But yet, for the sake of the golden retriever, not only can you give money to the foundation, you can give information to the researchers that we work very closely with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, you know, the beauty and sadness of the Golden Retriever Lifetime Study is that most of the dogs that die in the girls' study, it's pretty clear cut, right? And we get a necropsy that's confirmatory, and it's really, really helpful for us to go back and dive into genetic data and say, you know, what is it that's driving lymphoma and hemangiosarcoma and all of the other terrible things that afflict our favorite dogs so often. But for me, when a dog dies suddenly and we don't have an understanding of what that likely was, or it doesn't seem very sensible, that's a time where I think it's worth identifying the pathology service that wants to go that extra mile and be invested in the process with you. And that's really hard to do in the moment of an unexpected death, right? It's like really, really hard to do at that.
Or is it 3 years and 4 years?
Yeah,
That would be the first, like,
median survival time in severe liver stenosis, the best report we have is 19 months. So that's median. So it wouldn't be unheard of for this 12-month, 14-month, 10-month-old dog if they had severe SAS to die suddenly from severe SAS. Now those dogs should have had heart murmurs, right? If they had severe SAS, they should have had heart murmurs. Did these puppies get a good listen after their, you know, rabies vaccine? Who knows, right? If they weren't breeding stock that was going for echoes, they may have gone for their rabies vaccine, been a wild, excited, wonderful golden retriever, and not gotten a good listen, right? I mean, I had a lot of folks ask me today, like, well, that's weird, or today and yesterday, it's weird, how did my vet not hear this murmur? And I'm like, well, because your vet isn't just doing this, right? Like, I only do one thing, folks, right? Like, I would definitely miss the otitis externa, the thing going on with the foot, the slight limp, you know, all the other things. I would miss those on a physical exam, right? I'm only trained to listen for heart murmurs, right? So in some ways, it makes perfect sense that I hear something that maybe was missed on your routine physical exam when your dog was excited and bouncing off the wall.
I've got one more question
Yeah.
about necropsy, and then I'll leave you
Yeah.
alone. How do we find these places that are going to go in depth and find, like,
Yeah, it's a good question. How do you find the places that can do this?
Do you have an answer?
I think, to me, most academic veterinary schools have pretty great pathology services that offer their support. It's often limited to people who are clients of the institution, right? Like at Davis, if you were ever a client of UC Davis, the necropsy was free forever.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't necessarily advertise that, but if your dog ever had a record at UC Davis and it died and you wanted to drop it off for a necropsy, they would do a necropsy, a full necropsy, and report it out. It's the same at NC. It's a little less advertised, I think, even than that, but we also do that if you're a client. The ones that offer commercial availability of necropsies, if you're not a client, are fewer and further between because the workforce is pretty thin in terms of veterinary pathologists.
because our biggest problem is
they said they had such difficulty getting one student to drive this car.
Yeah. It's totally hard. So here's my advice. I'm a 3,000 foot view person. This is how we make a difference in this. We all band together and we tell Kelly to go back to Morris Animal and have Morris create a fellowship for academic veterinary pathology trainees to build a
I will tell you the biggest problem we have with Morrison. I'm on the team necropsy.
Yeah.
So I run across this constantly.
Yep.
And since I recently had to go through it with my own dog, I couldn't get it to
Yeah.
NC State because it
Right.
was on a weekend. So I went to
Yep.
Raleigh.
Yep.
and I think they're very good, don't
Right.
get me wrong. But I would have preferred NC
Right.
State, but unfortunately she wasn't a 9 to 5 girl.
Yep.
So we couldn't do that.
Yep.
So that's why I'm asking. We need to have this ability to
agree.
have a place to go.
What I will say from all I can really help with, I think, is cardiology. But what I will say is my lab and my team is always happy to weigh in on necropsies and pathology. I love pathology. I almost wanted to be a pathologist, but then I enjoyed my patients being alive. And so we frequently get people to mail us hearts. Post necropsy, we frequently get people to mail us slides and necropsy results, and we consult. That's how we got these cases. They were not necropsy at NC State. They were necropsy by another pathologist who knew that we like cardiac pathology, and there aren't very many cardiac pathologists out there, so we're like the next best game in town. They come to the cardiologist after that. So very happy to help in that way. If there's ever a question, we're very happy to teach you guys that stuff.
Thank you.
I don't want to keep everybody too long, but I do want to show one more slide just to put up that we do other things other than just hearts, because we love golden retrievers in the lab. So we are still working on ectopic ureters. This one is near and dear to my heart. My very first golden retriever I got because she was peeing all over herself. And as a silly veterinary student, I said, I'll take her. And then we fixed her. But ectopic ureters, we need additional effective dogs, but we also need family members that are born. It would be really more powerful for us to have some relatives of effective dogs that have no urine leakage. And so that's something very, very important for us. Masturbatory muscle myositis. This is a disease that is just horrible for those of you that have met dogs that have had it. It is way too overrepresented in golden retrievers to be a coincidence. And for some reason, people do not want to talk about this disease. And they do not want to send samples. You know, people have been beating the bushes to get us samples on this disease, and we still have just a small handful of confirmed cases. All we're asking for is the confirmatory diagnosis from antibody testing through the lab, a 3 to 5 generation pedigree, and a blood sample. That's it. We'll never, I promise I will never tell anybody that you know, anybody knows who you are and what the dog was and what line they're from. I could care less about that stuff, I promise. But we really, really need more samples. So if you know a dog that's been diagnosed definitively, it would be really great to have more samples of that disease. I think this is a solvable disease. I do believe it's commonly misdiagnosed with trigeminal neuritis. Absolutely, people commonly misdiagnose it with trigeminal neuritis, which is why we're requiring that we will only enter samples in our study if they have the confirmatory test through diagnosis.
Can you say again what it's often confused with?
Trigeminal neuritis.
Trigeminal neuritis.
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 Yeah, inflammation of the trigeminal. Yeah. Double-chambered right ventricle. Anybody who likes cardiology may have once heard of a dog that had this condition. It is a wildly rare disease. Like, we see maybe 1 or 2 a year as a cardiologist in the clinic. And guess what? They're almost all retrievers.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. In fact, one of my friends' most lovely golden retrievers lived to be 11 years old, and Dr. Hamlin saw that dog at a cardiology clinic at a dog show in Ohio, listened to the dog and said, "You've got to take that dog to NC State and get him fixed, because they fixed double-chambered right ventricle, and this puppy has a double-chambered right ventricle." He never ever done. He only listened to the dog. The man is a legend. And he was absolutely correct. That puppy came to NC State. My resident mate adopted him, and he had double-chambered right ventricle. We have his sample. We have another 2 or 3 samples. I need just a handful more, I think, to solve that one for Lawrence. It's super rare. It should be easy to find. Subaortic stenosis. God, I hate this disease. We are still working on subaortic stenosis. If you have a dog with subaortic stenosis, please share it with us. It's going to be a really strange polygenic disorder. It's not just one gene, it's a lot of things, it looks like. OAVRT. This is a weird one. You may have never heard of this. Orthodromic AV nodal reciprocating tachycardia. It's a mouthful. It's a very fast arrhythmia disorder, almost exclusively in Labrador retrievers and golden retrievers. And so the second most commonly diagnosed breed is the golden retriever. We've been looking at it in labs, but collecting DNA and sequencing golden retrievers too, hoping that they share the same thing. So that's one that we're interested in. Pigmentary uveitis, you guys have Dr. Townsend working on this disease and predicting this disease and doing lots of work in genetics, genomics, and all the like. Because we're geneticists and because I love golden retrievers, I also can't help but take samples on this and hope that when we do some of our special sequencing, we'll find something cool. So we're looking at doing some long-range sequencing in golden retrievers with pigmentary uveitis because it does not look to be an easily found genetic mutation either. And so there's some new special techniques to look for different types of mutations that we're trying. And. So there you have it. All we need for any of these diseases is a couple mils of blood in a purple top tube, a 3-generation pedigree, and diagnostic medical records. You can reach out to Stern Laboratory at ncsu.edu. That's managed by my team. They respond to emails way better than I do. They accept samples, we'll log them in, we'll do all of the stuff for us and help get in touch with me. So if you have questions or problems with some samples, that's a great resource to use. Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. For sure. Yeah,
Josh.
absolutely. You're welcome to post this stuff anywhere. I have removed any incriminating information from all of these slides. All yours.
Josh, can I talk a second about ectopic ureters? Because I worked on this many years ago with you. And we got this year 2 breeders, unrelated, who contacted us and they said, we have ectopic ureters in our puppies. What can we do? I had 3 rescues come in because we pay April Fund, we pay the veterinary things, ectopic ureter surgery. So I contacted all of them. I spoke to Josh about this because this is how we can be proactive. We will pay and reimburse you for the blood submissions, okay? Because it has to be in an overnight pack to him. So the foundation has set aside money to take care of this. So we're pretty close on EU, I believe, yes?
Yeah, we have a pretty good number of samples. And so what we do, so just to tell you what we do, right? Anybody that's like, I sent samples and I don't know nothing from that guy yet. So what we do is we collect samples for all of these diseases, and then when we get money, we submit them for whole genome sequencing. And so sometimes we get that money from a donation to the lab, sometimes it's left over in one of our other accounts, one of our other projects that has some additional sequencing money. And so we add sequencing on all the time, right? So Victor's cardiac troponin I mutation, completely unfunded. So we submitted those because we were excited about golden retriever HCM, and we had another project that was fully funded. And when I went to the companies to do whole genome sequencing and said, how much is it going to cost to do 50 samples? They said, you know, whatever that is, $40,000. And I said, what about 61? And they're like, oh, well, at 55, you hit our discount threshold. And that's only an extra $1,600 or something. And so we often top up and add these on. So all these DNA samples are sitting in our freezers and on our database list. And as we have money and projects, we just start ticking them off and tossing them in for whole genome sequencing. So we've whole genome sequenced a lot of different diseases, and we keep adding to that mix, and it's really helpful for us to have them in the database. So diseases like ectopic ureters, I sequenced a lot of. MMM, we don't have very many, so I haven't sequenced very many. But if we get 10 or 12 in a row, I'll submit all of those straight away, because that would make the difference in discovery. And then we just start applying people to the projects, right? So we have summer students that come into the lab and are looking for things to do. We have lab managers ready to go, there's somebody just dying to work on it. So it's usually very, very effective to have those samples in waiting for projects like that. OAVRT, this is the Labrador Retriever Study. I showed you this because this is a disease that I think is going to be hard to solve. We need more golden retrievers if you know anybody that has this. But I just want to show you the pedigree of this disease in Labrador Retrievers. We should be able to answer this question. Right? This is an extended family of Labradors, and look at all the affected dogs out of unaffected parents. This is clearly a recessive condition in the Labrador Retriever and the Golden Retriever. We should be able to solve this disorder. Right? It is certainly heritable. The problem is in the diagnosis. And guess what? The problem is in the diagnosis for so many things on this list. Right? Pigmentary uveitis, who knows who has that disease? Right? Like that disease is really challenging to decide what is early PU and what isn't. Masturbatory muscle myositis. There's trigeminal neuritis that gets confused with it all the time. Subaortic stenosis. Well, myo-SAS looks a whole lot like an excited, idiotic young dog. Right? Very, very easy to get confused. So lots of these things, right, that we have to work on are challenging because of the phenotyping, where it gets to be a struggle. And so we're hoping to work on this one. I hope the golden retrievers make this one easier to solve. Labrador retrievers are very interesting. There are like 3 or 4 breeds in one breed. So the guide dogs look genetically completely discrete from conformation labs, look completely genetically discrete from field Labradors, look completely genetically discrete from backyard Labradors. It's a very interesting breed. They were so popular for so long that they diverged in so many ways. But they all get best. Very, very interesting. By the way, the heritability of this condition when we calculate it is laughable at 16%. Should be like 80 or 90% based on the pedigree, right? But it's garbage in, garbage out. So phenotyping a dog to be normal is really, really hard. Same with pigmentary uveitis. If you phenotype that disease, it's very, very, very hard. So if you do Dr. Townsend's clinic and you do all of the wonderful phenotyping that she does and you follow the families so closely for so long, you can get a really, really high heritability. But that's very limited to the small population that's been studied. If you apply that broadly, I bet the heritability of that disease is like 7%. Very interesting.
Dr. Stern, this goes back to what I was going to ask earlier, and
Yeah.
phenotyping these diseases and understanding if we really do have normal parents. And,
Yeah.
example, you have an ectopic inheritor that, quote unquote, the puppy grows out of it, and the parents are normal. Do you want to look at those sorts of things?
Yeah,
Is that
it's
valuable
hard.
to you?
I mean, it's good that, so those things are really valuable. So the very questionable phenotypes are really, really valuable. Once you find something, they're really, really valuable. When you're looking for something, they're really messy for the system, right? So we usually push the phenotypes very extreme in the beginning of disease discovery work, where we say, we don't want just seborrheic stenosis, we want severe seborrheic stenosis. And we don't want just normal on your echo. We want your echo number for your aortic flow velocity to be low enough that we're like, are you still with us? So we really push to the extremes on phenotyping in the beginning because we don't want any gray zone at the beginning. But in the end, that's the question people really want to know, right? You don't need a genetic test to know if your dog has severe seborrheic stenosis. You just need to put your hand on the chest and feel the murmur. So we desperately need those samples too. We just aren't going to use them right from the beginning, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't send them to us. And we're always happy to consult and talk about it. I think EU is really challenging in that way because mildly affected EU puppies can do exactly that. As their urethral pressure goes up, they'll stop leaking as they get older and as they get more bladder control. That definitely happens. My own first golden retriever never had corrective surgery. She just had submucosal collagen put in her urethra, and she got better. Barely had any challenges as an adult without ever having corrective surgery. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, really, really important. EU, by the way, is very fixable. So just so you all know, it didn't used to be. Back when I took that puppy out, it was kind of an abysmal success rate. Yeah. It was pretty abysmal in the beginning, but now our internal medicine team at State does electrocautery ablation of the EU. We have more than a 90% success rate for full contact.
Wow.
Like really, really good. And the procedure, because it's just electrocautery and cystoscopy, is fast and pretty easy and relative to a lot of things, not that expensive. So. Other questions?
No, thank you.